While on his way to go spend the summer with his brother down in Charleston, South Carolina, Travis, along with his girlfriend, had a frightening encounter with a group of strange people in the Smoky Mountains. But before we get to their encounter, welcome back to Dark Wilderness. If you've had an encounter that you would like to share on the show, please email me at the link below. And if you like today's story, please gently slap that like button. And before you go driving off into the Smokies, make sure you grab that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, let's get into today's encounter. Today's encounter comes from Travis and happened in 2002 in the Tennessee portion of the Great Smoky Mountains. Travis, along with his girlfriend Melissa, were recent high school graduates, and they were really looking forward to spending the entire summer together, just enjoying each other's company before they had to break off and go their own separate ways for college. Now, there was a problem with this because Melissa's parents were heading out to Paris, and they were not comfortable leaving their daughter at home by herself. So they made a deal with her that she'd be able to stay in the US as long as she found somewhere to stay for the summer. Travis asked his parents, but they were not comfortable with that idea, so it left the two of them in kind of a little bit of a predicament. That was until Travis's older brother Mike, who had recently moved about 6 months before down to Charleston, South Carolina, offered for them to come stay with him for the summer. The two of them were absolutely thrilled at that news, so they made plans to make their way from Cincinnati all the way down to Charleston. So once the day came, they loaded up Travis's truck, jumped in, and they started making their way southeast towards Charleston. Now, they really had no set time frame for this trip, so they really took their time making their way down. They would stop at the various towns along the way, take in the sights, and because they were both very outdoorsy, anytime that they would see a hiking trail or even a back road leading off the highway, they'd pull the vehicle over and they would go for a hike just to take in the scenery, take in nature, and spend time with each other out in the outdoors. Once they got closer towards the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, they were on Interstate 129. Now, once they were on 129, they kind of kept up with what they've been doing this entire trip so far, and every time they saw anything that resembled a trail or a little back road, they would go for a hike down it. As they made their way further down 129, they passed the town of Tapoco. Shortly thereafter, it was getting pretty dark, and they really did not know if there were any campgrounds coming up. You have to remember, this was back in the day before smartphones, so it's not like you could just pull open your phone, take a look on Google, and it would tell you where there'd be a campground. So they were getting a little bit nervous just because they did not know how far they had to go down this road before they would get to anywhere that they could spend the night. About 20 minutes later, they noticed this trail leading off the side of the highway going up into the mountains. The trail was a little bit overgrown, but Travis had a 1999 F-150. He had it jacked up. He had 33-inch tires on it. So he was not too concerned about going down this type of road. So he pulled up right beside this road. He looked over at Melissa and he said, "Hey, do you just want to pull down this road for the night? We'll find a spot to park and we'll just camp out in the truck." And she was completely fine with that. So Travis turned his truck, started making his way down this bumpy, grown-in road, and they drove for about a mile down this road. By the time that they got to a spot where they decided that's where they were going to park the truck for the night, it was full on dark. Luckily for them, because they were camping along the way, they had a cooler full of food inside the truck with them. So they were able to have a bite to eat before they called it a night. Once they finished eating, they reclined their seats back and they tried to get to sleep. It had been a few days of traveling already and doing lots of hiking along the way, and both of them were absolutely exhausted. Melissa managed to fall asleep really fast, but Travis was really struggling to get comfortable on his reclined seat, to the point that he decided that maybe he should get up, go outside, and set the tent up right beside the truck. He figured he'd be a lot more comfortable doing that. However, right after he had that thought, he started to have a really bad feeling like this was just not a good idea. And he wasn't sure if that feeling was because either they were in the middle of nowhere, no one else around, and he had never done any form of totally remote camping like that before, or if it was because they were on this road and he really had no idea where it led. So he decided he would just listen to his gut and he would try to tough it out and fall asleep in the truck. After a bit of a struggle, he managed to fall asleep, but at about 2 o'clock in the morning, Melissa was woken up by the sounds of somebody walking around the outside of the truck. So she leaned over, shook Travis, woke him up, told him what she had heard outside. So he sat up and he started looking through the windows, trying to see if he could see who this person was or what this was that was walking around the truck. After a couple of minutes of seeing absolutely nothing, the two of them kind of decided, you know what, it was probably just an animal, probably some form of a deer, a raccoon or something. I'm sure it'll be fine. And they just lied back down and tried to go back to sleep. About 15 minutes later, again, Melissa heard the sound of somebody walking around the truck, except this time it sounded like it was more than one person. It sounded like it was multiple, about 4 or 5 people. So she got really nervous, again, shook Travis, told him what was going on. He sat up, and this time he decided he was just going to turn on his headlights to kind of illuminate the area in front of them to try to get a look at whoever this was or whatever this was. So he hit his headlights, and standing directly in front of the truck, about 20 yards ahead, there were these 4 people that he described as being incredibly filthy. He said it looked like they were covered in mud. He said they really kind of reminded him of Arnold in the first Predator movie when he covered himself in mud so that the Predator couldn't see him. He said they were just absolutely filthy. He said they just stood there staring directly at him and his girlfriend in the truck. At this point, he reached down beside him, he flipped the seat up, started the truck, and his plan was he was going to turn around and just get out of there. But as soon as he started to move the truck forward and turn it, and those headlights came off the people in front of them, those people started to move closer towards the truck. At that point, he kind of backed up a little bit more, repositioned his truck so that the headlights were shining directly at these people. And now in front of him, instead of only being 4 or 5 people, he said there had to have been about 10 or 11 of them just standing in the middle of this road staring directly at them. At this point, him and Melissa are absolutely freaking out. He has no form of protection with him. He had no type of firearm. He had a pocket knife, and that was about it. And he had no idea what these people wanted. So again, he tried to turn his truck around, and as soon as the lights came off those people started moving closer to the truck again. At this point, Travis was in an absolute panic mode. Melissa was screaming beside him, and he had no idea what to do. He just knew that they had to get out of there because they had no idea what these people wanted. So at this point, he just kept the truck in reverse and slowly started backing down this narrow grown-in trail. He said as the truck was backing down the trail, these people just kept moving towards him, just outside the reach of the headlights. Kind of like when you have your headlights on, you'll get the part that gets really illuminated, and just in behind that will be a little bit darker. That was the area where these people were standing. So as they made their way down this trail, backing up, he said it was incredibly painfully slow. He could not see anything behind him. And he, at this point, did not want to back into anything. He did not want to go off this road to get stuck and have to deal with these people. So he said it was just very painstakingly made his way backing up down this trail. The whole time, these people staying just out of the reach of the headlights. At one point, while they were backing down the trail, the truck came to an abrupt stop, and Travis knew that he had hit something. He didn't know if he had backed into a tree, or if he had gone partway off the trail, or if it was just a log across the trail. However, Travis did not remember on the drive in having to drive around any logs or go over any logs. All he knew in this moment was his truck would not move. He was giving gas, he could hear the tires spinning, he could feel them spinning, but the truck just would not budge in reverse. At this point now, Travis was absolutely horrified because those people were getting even closer to the truck now, and he thought that for sure this was how him and Melissa were going to die. They were going to be killed by these people and nobody would ever see them again. In that moment, he made a split-second decision that he was going to move forward a few feet, put the truck in reverse, and just gun it and hope for the best. So that's exactly what he did. He moved the truck forward a few feet, put it in reverse, put his foot to the floor, and almost as soon as the truck took off in reverse, he felt the truck hit something and bounce up. And sure enough, it was a big tree across the trail. However, Travis said once they cleared that tree, he noticed on the right-hand side of the trail, at the end of that tree, he could see fresh cut marks. He said it looked like somebody had chopped it down with an axe and intentionally fell it across this road. So now at this point, Travis was convinced that that tree was dropped by those people or somebody with them. And in that moment, he knew that they were in some serious trouble, not only just because of the way that these people looked, looking so bizarre, or the fact that they were in the middle of nowhere, or not even the fact that they were following them down this trail, staying just outside the reach of the headlights. But if they had dropped this tree across a trail in like an attempt to trap them on it, He knew that the outcome would not be good if they caught up to them. So Travis put his foot down a little harder on the accelerator, picked up the pace as they backed down the rest of this trail. After a few minutes, he could see the highway down behind him, and he could see some headlights, some cars moving back and forth. And he started to feel a little bit more at ease at this point. As they continued making their way towards the highway, which was getting closer every second, Melissa told him to look out the windshield. So Travis looked out the windshield, and right in the middle of the trail in front of them, these people had completely stopped. They were standing in a straight line covering the entire trail. At this point, he put his foot to the floor and he just gunned it all the way back to the highway. Once he got to the highway, he put his truck in drive and he floored it for the nearest town, which was Scintilla. Once they got there, they contacted the authorities, they made a report, and the police said that they would investigate and contact him if anything ever came of it. Travis said he never did hear anything back from the police, and when I asked him if he had any advice to share, he kind of chuckled and said, yeah, to quote an American Werewolf in London, stick to the roads, stay away from the moors. And then he said, that advice is actually pretty sound. He said, if you're ever going on a road trip, you're ever doing any type of highway driving, he said, if you start to feel tired, try to find a rest stop, try to find a motel or a campground. He said, don't just go driving down some endless trail into the mountains. And he said, if you do ever go on a road trip like that, he said, and you do plan on camping on various old logging roads or even going hiking into the woods, he said, always bring some form of protection with you. Well, that's it for today's encounter. As always, thanks for joining us. And if you have any comments, please leave a comment to the comment section. I do make it a habit of replying to every comment that's made. So before you hop in your truck and go driving off into the Smoky Mountains, don't forget to grab that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.